Okay, wait, now I'll do it again. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Board of County Commissioners meeting. It is Wednesday, February 19th. It's right at 9:31. We'll start with the pledge, and I would ask Chad Dunlap to lead us in the pledge, if you would. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you could remain standing, please, Pastor Ben Gate is going to lead us in an invocation.
Father, we are grateful that you give us opportunity to discuss, Lord. We ask, Lord, as you ask and make known to us that we need wisdom to seek it from you, Lord. So we certainly seek it for our county commissioners, Lord. We're grateful, Lord, for Rick's welcome, Lord, in the sky. Just grateful for that, Lord. But we do not take our lives for granted. And so, Lord, help us to contribute in any way we can to Montrose, Lord, in these offices that you have called us, Lord, in these positions of leadership, Lord. And for our public, Lord, when we bring up issues, let us be clear, Lord, so there'll be clarity, Lord, and that our board can listen and respond accordingly. Lord, we thank you for the privilege that we could meet in a peaceful gathering, Lord. And now go before us, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Roll call, please.
District 1, Scott Majaris.
Present.
District 2, Sue Hanson.
Here.
District 3, Sean Pond.
Present.
And before I move to the public comment period, I just wanted to welcome Commissioner Sean Pond to our presence, and we're glad to have you, and welcome to the Montrose family. As always, this is our time for our public comment period. Are there any members of the public who would like to address us? Chad, please. State your name, you know the routine.
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Chad Dunlap, and I'm here on behalf of the Dunlap family, 1495 Chipeta Road, Montrose. Just wanted to take a few minutes and express our gratitude to all of Montrose County staff. We realized to pull off our wishes and the magnitude that it was truly took a village, and we don't want to take away from anything that anybody contributed to this, but we wanted to take this time and recognize 3 individuals who were shining stars throughout this process, and County Manager Frank Rodriguez, Assistant County Manager Emily Sanchez, and Communications Director Erica Story. 5 days was not a long time to pull off our wishes, and not only did they pull it off, but they knocked it out of the park, and we're forever grateful for that. Just to put it in a little bit of context, I'm going on my 30th year in the law enforcement profession this summer, and I work for an agency that is 700 strong sworn officers. So as you can imagine, I've been around a lot of leaders throughout my career, and I just want to tell you that in those 3 people, you have leaders, and there's a saying in the leadership world that if you surround yourself with the right people, you don't have to work a day in your life, and I see that in these 3, and I think you know as commissioners what you have here, and they're outstanding professionals and outstanding individuals, and we're forever grateful.
Thank you very much, Chad. It's not lost on us how special they all are, so thank you for making that tribute. And a round of applause is fine. Mr. Anderson?
Good morning, Jim Anderson.
Could you say we want to write you a letter, your address, please?
Oh, my 3208 Holly Way, Montrose. Thank you very much. Out of respect for the agenda this morning. I'm going to make this very, very brief. And just say that I want to come back at a later date and see if we can get some clarification on the hiring of Janet Rowland, how that came to be, and ask the commissioners if they might review that, because there seems to be a little bit of concern about that hiring, and ask you if you would take a look at that, who initiated it, what happened there, and see if that was the best choice for Montrose County. So I'm going to leave that there. The second thing is at a later time, and I'm going to talk to some of our Republican friends a little bit more about this, but some recommendations on how the Montrose County Board of Commissioners may want to review their transparency procedures and to improve that and get more public involvement. So I'll come back at a later time with that and ask you to, in the meantime, to consider that. And then the third thing, very briefly, I attended the meeting last week, and there was a presentation on the North Campus. And having been very, very familiar with MURA, what goes on there in the North Campus, after that presentation, which on the North Campus, I can tell you I had a lot of questions and a lot of concerns, and I would like to come back at a more appropriate time if you would like, or if you're interested, commissioners, in talking to you about not only what you know, but what you don't know that was made during that presentation. Quite honestly, I have to tell you, it was closest to a full Broadway production as what I've seen in a long time. So a lot of concerns, and I think you need some more information on some of the points that were given, certainly a different point of view, and so at a more appropriate time. And if you're interested, I can talk to you individually or come back at a later time. So with that, because of the agenda and the important things we have to do, I'm going to wrap this up and
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
some concerns. Thank you.
Anyone else any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to County Manager Frank. Any changes?
The only change is Commissioner Majares would like to remove agenda item 9, the 45-day freeze on all construction activities of the proposed North Campus project from the agenda.
Okay. Thank you very,
If I may?
Sure.
Just explain myself. I wasn't happy with the way that went down. I share the same concerns as many people do over public involvement in this project. But unfortunately, we put into a box by the previous board. Stryker, as a result of my proposed agenda item, has given us a list of the proposed changes. Just from a 45-day hold, it looks like it would put the county at risk to the tune of $2,219,000, which is a risk we can't afford to take. And this was presented to us this morning by Charles Bunny, who's the project manager for Stryker. So unfortunately, we're going to have to fulfill our commitments that were made by the previous board. And I can tell you, Mrs. Dunlap, that Rick and I discussed this, and he was also opposed to this contract being signed by the previous board. And I think that created some conflict for him. But I just wanted everybody to know that we did discuss this in between the time we got elected and the time we got put into office.
well, I might just remind the public that the vote at the last board meeting was to approve the 45-day hold on the contract to review, and there was no second. So Commissioner Dunlap was there, present, and did not make a second, so that motion failed. So he was aware. He might have expressed concerns prior to that, but at that time, he did not make a second, so the motion failed. So I just want to clarify for the record. So thank you for that.
You're
and
welcome.
We'll move on to a more fitting tribute for Commissioner Dunlap. We have consideration and possible approval of a proclamation as a tribute to Commissioner Dunlap, and I believe, Curtis, are you going to read that for us? If you'd like to go to the podium and...
Good morning, thank you guys. Whereas the Montrose County community mourns the loss of Commissioner Rick Dunlap. And whereas Rick overcame humble beginnings to forge a path of dedication, service, and leadership to his faith, family, county, community, and country. And whereas Rick served selflessly throughout his military career, earning the Defense Service Medal, the Vietnam Service Medal, the Vietnam Cross of Gallantry with Palm, and the Bronze Star with Valor. And whereas Rick was a remarkable man, a devoted husband, father, and papa to his wife Karen, sons Gregory, Chad, and Joshua, grandchildren Christina, Curtis, Dylan, Michaela, Casey, Emily, Spencer, and Micah, and great-grandchildren Hadley, Conrad, Rowan, Tiago, and 2 on the way. And whereas Rick continuously contributed to his community by serving in numerous boards, including Grace Community Church as a volunteer firefighter and member of the Montrose County Sheriff's Posse. And whereas Rick was elected Montrose County Sheriff in 2006, where he proudly served 12 years with unwavering integrity, honor, and respect for both the law and the community, and implemented numerous initiatives aimed at improving public safety, fostering positive relationships between law enforcement and residents, and ensuring that justice was served fairly and without bias. And whereas in November 2024, Rick was elected Montrose County Commissioner for District 3, continuing his legacy of public service. And now therefore, be it resolved, the Montrose County hereby honors the life, service, and legacy of Commissioner Rick Dunlap. We expressed our deepest gratitude for his decades of dedication and service, and feel privileged to have known and worked alongside him. And be it further resolved that this proclamation be entered into the official record of the Montrose County as a lasting tribute to Commissioner Rick Dunlap's extraordinary contributions to our community and our nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Curtis. While it was short, it was a pleasure to serve with Commissioner Dunlap, and his ability to disarm people and to be calm and honest and forthright. I'll miss that, and I'll miss the future, as I said during his funeral, the future of what we could have done together. So big shoes to fill, as that would be, but thank you for doing that. Going to miss him terribly. So with that, may I have a motion to move this proclamation?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we move this proclamation into the permanent record to acknowledge Rick Dunlap as a public servant and a beloved member of our community.
Have a second? Second. I have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you for being here. Thank you so much. We really are sorry for your loss. So, okay. With that, the next item is we're amending, with Rick's passing, we are amending the appointment of chair and vice chair. So I would call for a nomination for appointing a chair.
I would call for a nomination for Commissioner Scott Majarez under Resolution 130225 for chair.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? I oppose. So you are now the chair, and should I go ahead and finish this or turn it over now?
No, you would turn
Okay.
it over now.
Okay, continuing on, we will continue on with a motion to elect a vice chair for the Montrose Board of County Commissioners. Do we have a nomination for vice chair? I'd like to nominate Commissioner Sean Pond to vice chair.
I will second.
Any discussion on that? No? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Congratulations, Commissioner Pond. All right, moving on. On the next agenda item, we have Human Services Director Jen Sherwood. Consideration of possible action for annual core service purchase services agreement with Family First Forensic Consultants. Is Jennifer here? Jennifer, would you like to address the?
So, Montrose County Human Services houses child welfare services, and as part of child welfare services, we are obligated to provide services to the families in which we are involved with, including educational, therapeutic, child care, multitude of others. And this is a new contract that we are entering into because unfortunately in Montrose County there is a lack of Medicaid providers. And so we utilize core funding that is provided to us by the state to cover those costs, depending on what their hourly rate is or whatever their fee is, up to our allotted allocation of just under $500,000.
Okay, any questions from any of the board? We did discuss this in the work session yesterday, and Jennifer was answered questions, so we'll need a motion on this.
I move that we adopt the annual core services agreement with Family First Forensic Consultants.
And is there a second?
I will second.
Is there any discussion, concerns?
No, as you know, this is the same pot of money that we do about 100 contracts per year, so I have no questions about that.
All right, well, all in favor, please acknowledge by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Second, number 4 on the agenda is Human Services. Jennifer Sherwood, Human Services Director. Consideration and possible action on the State of Colorado Department of Health Care Policy and Financing, HCPF, contract number C24-188-032A3, effective April 25th. June 30th, 2025, extending the original contract C24-18-8032 for the next state fiscal year as reviewed by council. This represents a budgeted 100% reimbursement expense. I assume that's by the state, correct, Jennifer?
State and federal money.
State and
yes.
federal. Any comments on this, or do you have any questions? No? Pretty routine?
Yes.
All right, we'll ask for a motion then.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the State of Colorado Department of Healthcare HECPUF contract number C24-188-032A3.
All right. Do we have a second?
I will second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Next on the agenda is Public Works, Rick Nichols, Public Works Director. Consideration and possible award of a 2025 Kinnikin gravel crushing contract to Rocky Mountain Aggregate of Montrose. Rocky Mountain Aggregate submitted the lowest bid responsible and its responsive bid in the amount of $441,000. This represents a budgeted item. This will get the work done on the Kinnikin Road project. And so we'd ask Rick if you'd like to address the board on this.
Yeah, I'd like to recommend the board that they approve this. The importance is that when we originally started the project for Kinnikin, we went outside for bids. And so the rock would be supplied by the contractor. We tested the rock in our pits because we didn't know if it matched the specification that was required in order to do the job. It was hard enough. Those tests, of the 3 sources in the pit for the rock, 2 failed the test and they wouldn't be acceptable. But then on the 3rd, we found out that we could supply rock for the project out of the Cedar Pit, which is just 6 miles down the road. This opened up the door for the county to have significant savings. On the first round of bids, all the contractors bid, they had to go find rock and then have it crushed and then sent to the project. But now, since we can use our own rock out of our own pit down the road 6 miles, we've asked them to rebid the project. And so those contractors are currently in the process of rebidding the project with using our rock. And the significance for the county is about over $1 million savings by using our own. So we went out for bids to crush our own rock, and that's the winning bidder was 441,235.00. So what I'm recommending is that we go and crush our own rock and save over $1 million in savings on the project.
Okay. And you did put the bid out to 4?
Yeah, we did. We sent it. Well, we sent the bid. You know, it was publicly it was publicly out. We were hoping to get 4, but only 1 replied, and so that's the 441,235.
And any questions from any board members on this?
No questions for me.
All right, any questions from the, members of the public on this, Rick? I think he did his best to get the lowest cost bid, and it's just a sign of the times. It's very, very competitive out there and busy, and we're lucky that you went through the effort to.
And the other thing that I'd like to say to the board is that it's not just the savings, but we're also being able to hold the timeline for the original timeline when we went out for bid the first time. So the project hasn't slipped any. We're just doing this in the front end, and we're gonna make up that time. So we're still looking at an August delivery date.
Okay. So we have a motion. Did we have a motion and a second?
Not yet.
Okay, we need a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the 2025 Kinnikin Road gravel crushing contract to Rocky Mountain Aggregate of Montrose in the amount of $441,235.
And we'll need a second.
I would second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Rick, very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, item number 6, Sheriff's Office, Courtney Brown, Pretrial Service Coordinator. Consideration and possible approval to staff to complete and submit an application to the Southwest Colorado Opioid Regional Council for funding for the pretrial service program through Montrose County Sheriff's Office. I believe we have Courtney here. Courtney, if you want to just kind of explain to the public what the nature of this is.
All right, so this grant allows us to have this program. Without grant, we wouldn't have this program. So the funding sources will help with our assessment tools, supplies, and what's needed for the pretrial services program.
Okay, and the pretrial services program is a program that will allow us to review case by case and maybe take a little bit of the load off of our correction facility, is that?
Well, the pretrial service program is designed to provide an objective assessment to the judges so they can decide whether or not it's appropriate, that it's a risk assessment to decide if it's appropriate to allow the person to go back into the community, or if they're a high risk, stay in the facility so the community is not at risk. So these two grants will provide us the funds necessary to run the pretrial service program, yes.
Does anybody have any questions on this?
Yeah, and you didn't mention the bonding, so this will also help judges determine the bonding.
Correct.
Right, parameters.
Correct, whether they want a cash bond, a personal recognizance bond.
So the higher the risk, then the judge has a guideline to provide that.
Correct.
Okay.
So if the higher the risk, the higher the bond or no bond,
Right.
if necessary.
Great, thank you.
All right, well, I would like a motion if there are no other questions.
Yeah, I would motion to approve for the grant to staff to complete the application for the Southwest Opioid Regional Council.
Can we have a second?
Second?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Moving on to item number 7, Courtney's still there at the podium. Sheriff's Office, Courtney Brown, Pretrial Service Coordinator. Consideration and possible approval of staff to complete and submit an application to the Colorado Division of Criminal Justice for the Byrne State Crisis Intervention Program to provide grant funding for pretrial services through the Montrose County Sheriff's Office.
Yes.
Yes.
So, same as before. This program, when we took on this program, it is all grant funded. We are trying to make it so the county's not providing any funding for the program. Therefore, it's not coming out of any coffers that we can, that we don't need to pull from. So, again, we're trying to get as much grant funding as we potentially can.
Any questions? No? By the way, I just want to mention, we did cover this in the work session, but out of courtesy, we just want to make sure people are informed. Any questions from the audience and citizens? No? All right, well, then we'll take a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the approval for the staff to complete an application to the Colorado Division of Criminal Justice for the Burn State Crisis Intervention Program.
Can I have a second?
I will second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, number 8 on our agenda is Sheriff's Office, Linda Carl, Victims Advocate, consideration and possible authorization of the chair's signature on a grant application with the Department of Public Safety, Division of Criminal Justice, for a grant award of the Victims Crime Act, VOCA program. Yes, Linda?
So this grant, it's a revenue that pays partial salary for the victim advocate at the sheriff's office. This grant is actually January 1 of 2026 to December 31st of 2026.
And what's the amount of your grant?
I'm asking for $20,073.
And just for the commissioners, this is an annual request through the
Yes.
same VOCA grant.
Yeah,
Linda,
we've received this grant since 2011.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the authorization on the grant application for the Department of Public Safety, Division of Criminal Justice.
Do I have a second?
I will second.
Signify by, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Mr. Mr. Chair, before we move on to item 10, referenced agenda item 9 was taken off the agenda, and public comments, I would make a recommendation to you and the board that we hang all of our products on the North Campus in our minutes. That way they're accessible to the public
Okay.
on the North Campus.
On the 21 months from now, or whenever it's going to be built, we put our minutes, is that what you're saying?
No, no.
No, I'm saying we hang all the products on the minutes for this meeting
Okay.
on the North Campus, so they are available to the public.
All the notes and-
Oh, the notes,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, to include the timeline, everything that was presented previously, and then they think that would help out with the transparency piece, and then any information that the public wants to garner or gather, and then any follow-up questions, of course, the staff will make itself available. So with your approval, we'll hang those on the minutes.
Okay, do we need to make a motion for that?
No, sir, just, you know.
Okay. So, in the spirit of transparency, I think that's an excellent idea, County Manager. So we'll move on to item, I just want to say that item number 9, the 45-day thing, was removed from me, as explained earlier. We just don't need to, we can't, it's a risk we can't afford to take at this point, and we have some more important things to do. Okay, moving on to item number 10, Board of County Commissioner Sean Pond, Commissioner. Consideration and possible adoption of Resolution 14-25 and statement of intent opposing the designation of the Dolores National Conservation Area. Can I have a motion on this?
No, we'd like to have some,
Well, we'll do a discussion after we, right?
no,
Or do
will
I
you
do it
read,
first?
read the resolution? We don't
Oh,
know what's in the
All
resolution
right,
yet.
let me get that right here. Hold on a second, unless, Sean, would you like to read it?
Yeah, that's fine. But I also asked to be up on the overhead if anybody wanted to read along.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Resolution number 14-2025, the Montrose County Board of Commissioners opposing the designation of the Dolores National Conservation Area. Whereas Montrose County is home to vast public lands that serve as vital resources for local communities, industries, and outdoor recreation enthusiasts, supporting multiple use access, economic prosperity, and responsible land management. And whereas public land in Montrose County has historically been managed under the principles of multi-use and sustained yield ensuring that activities such as grazing, mining, energy development, and motorized and non-motorized recreation can coexist while preserving the area's ecological and cultural resources. Whereas a proposal has been introduced to designate the portion of the Dolores River region as the Dolores National Conservation Area, which would impose additional federal restrictions on land use and management, potentially limiting access and negatively impacting local industries' residents. And whereas the designation of the National Conservation Area introduces unnecessary federal oversight, further complicating land use regulation, restricting access for motorized recreation, creating a bureaucratic barrier that hinders responsible economic development, including mining, ranching, and energy production. And whereas the proposed NCA would further contribute to the erosion of local control over public lands, diminishing the ability of Montrose County residents to utilize these lands for productive purposes. And whereas the economic impact of such a designation could be detrimental to local businesses, including those in agricultural, mining, energy, and outdoor recreation sectors, by restricting access, limiting resource development, and reducing the availability of public lands for traditional uses. And whereas Montrose County rejects any efforts to further restrict access to public lands under the guise of conservation and opposes any federal designation that limits multi-use access, economic development, and individual freedoms. Now therefore be it resolved that the Montrose County Board of Commissioners formally opposes the designation of the Dolores National Conservation Area within the Montrose County and demand that the proposal be rejected. Be it further resolved that the Montrose County affirms its commitment to fighting against all restrictive federal land designations that threaten access, economic activity, and individual freedoms.
Okay, do we need to read the statement of intent also? Is that important to be in the record?
Well, it's not in the record yet until it passes, so.
Okay. All right. Yes. You could go to the podium so we can get you on the audio.
If this resolution is passed, will it be forwarded to the appropriate officials in the Federal Department of Interior for their consideration?
Well, that's a good question. I suppose it could be, and
I would like it to
should be. Anybody else in the public here? Well, I'd like to ask Commissioner Pond, what motivated you to do this? Is this something that you have a basis for introducing at this time?
Yeah, thank you for asking, Mr. Chair. So for those of you that don't know me, I, up until yesterday, was involved in public land advocacy and have been diligently fighting for public land access freedoms for multi-use on several different fronts. We were successful in dodging or averting the Dolores National Monument proposal, of which the Montrose County Board of Commissioners did pass a resolution opposing that unneeded federal land designation and restriction. Shortly after that, the National Conservation Area proposal came into light. Being that was passed, this new administration in our nation's capital taking hold, it now has come to light and poses a new threat for everything that I asked to be put into this resolution. Being involved in this, living in the west end of Montrose County, and this particular proposal being in my district, District 3, having the ear of literally hundreds, if not thousands, of constituents that have blown me up day and night for 12 months is absolutely my motivation. My constituents in District 3 and most of Montrose County unanimously oppose any government overreach and unneeded designation on public lands that restricts these accesses.
Commissioner Hanson, I know that you have constituents over there that might be in favor of presenting a national. Would you like to tell us about it?
And I would acknowledge Commissioner Pond's work on the HALT project or movement, and also on the recent NCA opposition. I would also respectfully ask that we push this resolution off so that the three commissioners, as everybody knows, Commissioner Pond came yesterday. So we haven't had a chance to have a conversation. Simultaneous to working his work on the HALT, I've been working with a work group, commissioners from Mesa County, because this doesn't just include Montrose County, it includes this proposal. Well, let me just clarify that. There really is no NCA proposal. There's been a discussion about that being a potential option. There's no formal proposal, there's no written language. There's been a group of the commissioner up in Mesa County, myself, our GIS teams from both counties, mining interests, recreational interests, people that have been working to have this conversation. I would respectfully ask that we can push this resolution off to another date, because we haven't even had a chance to discuss as a board what my work has been and what Sean's work has been and kind of where we land. I am not in favor of carving up or securing federal land in this broad proposal, which was put forth by the proponents of the Dolores Protection Project of 400,000 acres. We have been working on boundaries that would include much less of that land, but that nothing has been etched in stone. Nothing has been formally sent to anybody. It's just a discussion at this point. We had a meeting last night at Gateway to see where they land. I mean, they obviously don't want anything, and lots of us don't want anything. The fear is that the well-funded NGOs who push these proposals forward are funded far beyond what we could be even match. So what we'd like to do is take a step back, meet with Sean and the other commissioner, and talk about potential strategies that might not include a designation like an NCA, but that would also protect. So we have to work on things like the Antiquities Act. We have to work on things like the Equal Access to Justice, which allows environmentalists to put a lot of money into these opposition and the additional designations. So I think it's premature. I would like to make a counter proposal that we just push this off until we've had a chance to get to know each other, talk about it, and then update each other on what we've all been doing.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hanson. County Attorney Martha, do you have any thoughts on this? Does a proposal like this pose any risk to us, any liability, or is it something that we can rescind at a later date or as the things develop?
Certainly, a resolution can always be repealed, rescinded, replaced, or amended at any time. It does set essentially a marker of the board's policy.
Okay. Commissioner Hanson, I know that the fear is that the NGOs might come in and, they're well funded and so forth, but given the political environment, we're seeing the NGOs actually lose a lot of their power and strength. And do you feel that this might be a good signal to send out to them to go elsewhere and try to lock up land somewhere else?
I think Montrose County's position is pretty clear. We've met with legislative aides. We've talked to Senator Bennett. We've talked to Senator Hickenlooper. I still think it doesn't hurt to put this off and to have a conversation with you all before we push it forward. I think taking a stand about an opposition now may make a statement, but down the road, it may be something that we consider. I guess I'd like to have all options on the table is kind of my perspective, and I think there's options that we have not discussed yet, because the halt was all about no, and I think that no will most assuredly get us a monument, because despite the fact that we think they're going to be checked with this new administration, the fundraising efforts have doubled. I mean, the Sierra Club is out there. They are raising lots of money, and so I think that it would be wise if we had a united front more than I would oppose this if it passes. I would like to ask the consideration for my fellow commissioners to let's have a conversation first before we put forth an opposition.
Okay. Commissioner Pond, you've been working on this for over a year. What has been your experience of when a national conservation area has been designated, and how does that transition? Does that protect the citizens and guarantee them equal access and public land access?
No, typically national conservation areas, when created, they become more and more restrictive over time. There will be a RAC committee, typically which are staffed heavily with NGOs and environmental activists that continually pose more and more restrictions. We'll use the conservation area in Mesa County, the Dominguez Escalante National Conservation Area, as an example. That was where I grew up in Whitewater, Colorado, and I've watched over the years as more roads are closed each year. Gates are put up. The rule book is 478 pages. They just get more and more restrictive. And being active in public land advocacy, talking to organizations like the Blue Ribbon Coalition, the term that they like to use is national conservation areas are gateway drugs to national monuments. And there is absolutely nothing that protects a national conservation area from being turned into a national monument later. And that's not my opinion, that's federal law. So the President of the United States using or abusing the Antiquities Act of 1906 to impose a monument over the top of a national conservation area, a wilderness study area, or any locally led designation at all supersedes that authority. So does that of Congress. So to say that this conservation, that national conservation area proposal would protect that land from future monument threats is simply not true.
So let me, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
no one has said that, and I see that Justin wants to say something, but no one has said, first of all, again, no proposal on the table at all whatsoever. It's been a conversation, and I think that's important to recognize here. So, so yes, there have been instances where an NCA there have been additional restrictions have been put on those NCAs. I understand that. But to eliminate, so all I'm asking for is that we table this, have a conversation, and make a decision on what we want. Because I think there's some options that don't even have to be a designation for protection of those lands. So I'm just asking for a delay for a conversation. I'm not asking to put forth the NCA. I'm not supporting an NCA at this point. I mean, we've talked to enough people that are uncomfortable with some of the things that you have suggested about an NCA, that things can change. And I see Justin standing there. I didn't want.
All right, Justin, who's our Natural Resource Director, I'm sure you have something very important to share with us.
I'd like to think so, but I'm not sure about that. I would just like to voice a little bit of support of Sue's proposal to maybe table this and talk a little bit more. I think I suspect that the board has very, very similar opinions about what should be happening with these public lands. When and how to engage in those processes, I think I think it's important to have options on the table. When we previously had pulled out of these national conservation area discussions on that southern section, that was the NGOs kind of thought of that as an invitation to start the national monument discussion, and I think everybody is very much in opposition to the national monument for sure. Again, Sue's reiterated this a few times. There's no commitment on behalf of Montrose County to be in an NCA at all. There's no reason to. Well, Montrose County's not committed at this point. My concern with the resolution would be that we're inviting NGOs and other entities to have these discussions without us at that point. If we are not creating positions to engage in the discussion, I think they'll look for opportunities to go around us and go around the residents of those areas. And again, I'm very much in support of Sue's idea to put this off just slightly until we have the discussions and can.
How long have we been having a discussion? We've had the working group and we've had numerous community meetings. How long should we have a discussion for?
About the NCA or about? I would say the discussion on the table now is just about next steps and what to do next in this process. Okay. I guess the resolution in my mind is a commitment to not engage in those discussions, and I think there's a little bit of risk in that, and I think there has been some value in the NCA discussion in just creating space at the table for people to actually represent West End as in the interests of West End residents.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you say if we pass this resolution, we're going to make them angry, the NGOs angry, and they ultimately can do what they want. So my question is, from a negotiating standpoint, if they can do what they want anyway, why would we not pass this resolution, see what they come to us with, if they are overpowering us, we can always rescind the resolution.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, first of all, I keep going back to I don't know what we're opposing. I mean, if we're gonna oppose designations, then let's add wilderness areas, wilderness study areas, ACECs. I mean, let's put every single designation on this resolution, which is, I'm saying in jest. We have to be at the table having the conversation. That's what we've learned, is that that just saying no gets you eliminated from the conversation. But being willing to sit down and discuss the values, what needs to happen in those areas, and potentially discuss taking some of those wilderness study areas out of wilderness to open them up for use is a better discussion. And so again, we are opposing nothing. We're just opposing a designation, which I don't think has any meat in it. And I think that we can do better if we hold off and have a conversation and start meeting with our national. I mean, have you met Justin before?
Yes.
So, but we have not sit down in a conversation with all of us to discuss all of this, kind of catch you up on everything from the work group. I mean, we haven't had that conversation. I would ask that would be what we could respectfully just request.
So reply and then a question if you don't mind. But so you had asked a question, what we're opposing. The last line, Montrose County affirms its commitment to fighting all restrictive federal land designations that threaten access, economic activity, and individual freedoms.
Then the title of the resolution is incorrect, because it's not just a national conservation area. So again, all I'm asking for is a stay to have a conversation.
Question real quick. If I remember right, and I've met you, but I was never invited to be a part of the working group or partake. So if I remember correct, and keep me online, when I listened to your statement or testimony at the Nuclear Community Center in regards to your family, and you grew up on a ranch that was in the Dominguez Escalante National Conservation Area. And if I heard you sitting in the crowd, I heard you talk about how your family lost that land, how it was no longer a family ranch. So I'm just curious why you would want to have a conversation about something that so personally affected you and your family history.
Yeah, I think those are good. I think that's a good question. To start with, I'd like to back up just slightly and say I am in no way in opposition to your position or the board's wishes on any of this. I think that I want to make that very, very clear. In my experience, I think it makes a lot of sense to keep every option that we have on the table for these discussions. I think, too, this discussion about the NCA was to create an opportunity to engage with our legislators in this process, in a process that was happening without any say-so locally. And it wasn't even so much to say, hey, we think an NCA is a really good idea. It's, hey, we need to have some representation at the table. I guess personally, I feel a little bit, the resolution, I don't know, I feel like it puts me in a little bit of a hard spot because I was on that committee. And that's a little bit tough. As far as my family ranch and my history and that type of stuff, the ranch was lost. It was something that we weren't able to hold on to. That the NCA happened well after that was sold. It's far from a perfect solution, but I'm not even voicing opposition to the resolution at all. But I do think it might make sense to just table this and have some of these important discussions about what our next best steps are. I would really, really like to understand what your plan would be for our next step in this process. How do we get out ahead of this the next time something's coming down the pipe?
Yeah, so I'll address that if I can. So I'll kind of address the public here too, try to catch everybody up if I may. So originally, I guess in defense of Commissioner Hanson, when I sat out there a year ago, and the chairs you're in, and looked at the board up here, the blame was pointed at the Montrose County Board of Commissioners from withdrawing from a National Conservation Area talks with the NGOs. They were trying to create a National Conservation Area basically from McPhee Dam all the way to the state line and Gateway. And at that time, and in your wisdom, I believe that the Montrose County Board of Commissioners walked away from the table because it was too restrictive a designation. And I think what we're seeing happen, in my opinion, is I think that Commissioner Hanson and Cody Davis and members of the working group, in the middle of this monument threat, we're trying to advert a monument designation. And I had nothing negative to say about that until post-January 20th, when we knew that President Biden had not abused the Antiquities Act of 1906 and designated the Dolores River Canyon National Monument. So now my concern is, what is my plan? So I talk frequently to our representatives in Washington, D.C. There is a bill currently proposed to Congress to amend the Antiquities Act of 1906. With this being the case, and this particular administration having the White House, the Senate, and Congress, I believe there's a very good possibility that that amendment is going to happen. So rather than compromising and surrendering Montrose County citizens freedoms to access public land, I would like to take a bold stance from a position as a Board of County Commissioners and send a signal and trust in our elected representatives in Washington, D.C. to make meaningful legislative changes that protect Americans' freedoms and access to public lands. I don't believe that compromising freedoms as outlined in our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, is ever an option, if that makes sense.
That does make a ton of sense.
So I would
think
also
it's very,
that-
very logical.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Go, no.
I think that then if we're supporting the amendment of an Antiquities Act, that would be a more appropriate resolution. I think that leaving land designations on the table for conversations and not eliminating, I mean, you have to sit down with some of these folks. They are passionate about protecting those lands. They have their eyes on it. You don't make a movie about an area without being, dead set against trying to make something happen with that. So again, I'm going to ask that we just table it so we can have a conversation. If you would like to create a resolution in support of amending the Antiquities Act, I'm all for that. But this is too broad. It cuts off our knees from the conversations that we're having with some. I mean, we're talking to West Slope people. I mean, most of the people on our work group are West End people, miners that have interests over there that want to make sure that mining can still happen, and are concerned about doing nothing. And so we are engaging in the active conversations. We don't have all the answers and the solutions, but we are doing that. Additionally, a lot of your focus has been in the West End, and I think if you polled all of Montrose County, all 44,000 of us, I think there would be some other people that would not be in support of the county commissioners doing a broad resolution quite like this. And so again, it's been the work group's philosophy to be at the table, and we're talking cattle ranchers from Mesa County, we're talking miners, we're talking recreationalists. I think we have to keep it open to have a conversation. And since we've just got together as a board, I'm going to reiterate my counter motion to pull this and have a conversation.
Justin, you still up there? Did you have something you wanted to add?
I just wanted to be here just in case anybody had any more questions.
Is anybody in the audience would like to comment? Would you please just go up to the podium one at a time? Say your name and address, please.
Yeah, Ron Henderson, 61361 Monroe Road, Montrose, Colorado. Without a doubt, our country has changed to the point where this kind of situation is going to be ongoing and continuing, and without real resolve except through a lot of discussion and cussing. But the fact of the matter remains that Montrose County has almost enough land area for 2 Yosemite National Parks within our boundaries. And what we have on the west end is ecologically and geologically different. It's an immense, and it's really very unique. And this is not going to go away. And I think the only way to deal with it is aggressively and to it. It will become part of your daily efforts, is dealing with environmental concerns and national park concerns, wolf concerns, all that stuff. And to think that it's going to be any otherwise, you're fooling yourself. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Jim, state your name and address.
Okay. Jim Anderson, 3208. My question earlier about if this was going to be forwarded to the national people, there was a reason for that question. I've been watching hearings. I'm well aware of some of the things that Commissioner Pond has stated. And in asking that question, I realized, having watched a number of hearings and executive orders and the climate of Washington, D.C., whatever you decide and whatever you come up to, I'm going to recommend you act fast. Because if you don't, whatever your position is, this is going to be over. I'm telling you, things are, I mean, it's like watching the daily executive order show. Okay, get your popcorn and wait. So the reason I asked if this was going to be forwarded, I'm not taking a position either way, but I can tell you from what I'm hearing from the Department of Interior, Commerce, from the President, from various working groups, there's not going to be much of a delay on this. And what I heard is that, similar to what Commissioner Pond said, that the takings of federal lands and the way it's been going on during the Biden administration is no longer going to be, and it's going to be over, regardless of what your political position is. So my only point is, I don't think you have a delay. Whatever your position is and whatever the board comes up with, I think you should move on it quick and get it to the appropriate people. Because if you don't, you're not going to have a seat at the federal table. Thank you.
Ralph Files, 3365 Mahogany Drive. Over the years, I started in the late 90s with a group called Public Lands Partnership. Begin with that, it was two sides of the table. One that was in favor of logging and one definitely not. It was very hard to sit there and listen to the ones that could not stand logging. But we did. We finally started listening to each other and found out we were a lot closer together than we were apart. And today, through many efforts, long sessions, lots of talking, we've got it so that there's logging going on. And the reason for that is because of those discussions. And so I really wish or hope that you'll keep those discussions open and make good decisions. Discussions make a lot of difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have any thoughts on this, Jim?
Jim Haugsness, 1024 Fruit Park Road, Montrose, Colorado. I have a real problem with these resolutions, these blanket resolutions, particularly when they're geographically based. So in other words, we're talking about something that affects the West End. Like Mr. Anderson, I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't know basically anything, but I do have a problem with having a resolution coming out as a citizen of Montrose that I don't understand and I don't have an opinion on it. I think what should happen, and I agree with Commissioner Hanson that what should happen is there should be more of an outreach, not just to the West End, but the entire county if you're going to make a resolution that is endorsed by the entire citizenry. So I think you should look at doing some outreach and putting this on hold. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hanson, oh, go ahead.
Real quick.
Dennis Murphy, 62342 Gale Court. And I would just like to echo what Ralph Files just said about dialogue. I think that's really important. I actually worked for the BLM for 31 years and worked on NCAs over here. They can be crafted and molded in many different ways, and they don't have to be that restrictive, but they typically will bring you more money for management, which is important. You can have more facilities and that sort of thing. So without a proposal, you don't know what you're saying no to, because you're not sure what's going to be in that, because there's going to be hopefully a lot of dialogue between now and if one ever gets proposed to mold this thing. And it's going to mold this way, or is it going to mold that way? You don't know what it's going to look like. So I just like to caution you to not jump the gun too quick on this and ride it out.
I have a question for you, Dennis.
Okay.
If you're negotiating with the BLM or the federal government or NGOs, would having a resolution like that omit you from any negotiations, or would it be a good starting point to say, hey, this is where we're at, change our minds?
I think you'd be better off with a resolution stating you'd like to stay in the loop of discussions and be open to the proposals and be part of making those. If there's something that you really don't want to see, you fight that cause. But to blanketly say no NCA, we've got a couple within a few miles of us here. You got Dominguez Escalante and the Gunnison Gorge. Look at the number of people. That's the one thing I don't like about that. I'm kind of selfish. When I go to the woods or out in the wild, I don't like a lot of people, but the Gunnison Gorge now is stocked with a lot of people. It brings them in. It's like a neon sign. So there's negatives that way, but that's just part of the game. The West End, you've got a lot of RV parks opening up and things like that. So they might be in favor of it from that standpoint, but I'd just be cautious, and I think Sue's got a good point. You don't want to jump the gun on this. I'm kind of neutral on it. I haven't messed with the West End all that much since I retired 15 years ago, but it is a fairly unique, as Ron said, the geology over there is very interesting. I don't think the feds are going to deny uranium over there, because we're staring at some possible market comeback on that, and there's reserves for that over there. So that's not going to be taken off the chart. So grazing will not be. Grazing still goes on up here in Dominguez Escalante. So yeah, I think it can be molded in many different ways, and it's up to the community and the public at large to decide that.
And if I may,
Yes.
the public, that's why the NCA, I mean, we use that as the discussion point, but it was really mostly to get people involved in the conversation. And the folks in Gateway, some of the folks in West End didn't really feel like they were at the table talking about it. And again, I would say that when we do a resolution that reflects Montrose County, it should reflect Montrose County in its entirety. So I think I'll stand. I've said my piece 3 or 4 times now.
And I have a question for you, though. Everybody's talking about discussion. If I understand it correctly, you discovered exactly a year ago, yesterday, that there was discussions going on about a monument we didn't even know about. So these discussions were happening behind our backs, but after that, how many meetings have we had? I know we've had a couple in Nuclear, but you've also had the working groups. How much discussion is necessary?
A lot. I mean, the NCA that
Well, is it
erroneously.
discussion?
Well, let me hold on.
Okay.
So Commissioner Pond referred to the NCA that Montrose County was involved in working on. That, I think it was 11 years. And it wasn't, we didn't walk away because it was too restrictive. We walked away because I think they wore us out. Because we had, the conversations had to keep going on and on and on, and then we'd have a commissioner change in one county. We'd have to all come back to the table and talk about it again. So, but it wasn't because it was too restrictive. We had a say in those. Mark Catlin and John Washbush went to Cortez every week for, I think, under y'all's administration, right? I mean, working actively on the NCA on that designation. And I think it was 11 years, and it was just, enough. I think with the new administration, we have like a breath of fresh air. We can sit back and talk about a strategy that might work, that can help. I think in the meantime, Sean, most of your area has been in the halt, the monument, only recently that you stopped the NCA because you were for the NCA before you weren't against the NCA, right? So when we were originally talking about the NCA, Montrose County was taking a beating because we weren't still involved in that NCA. And now you're for the, against an NCA. So again, these designations can be whatever you want. You can put the language in that you want. And what I've been telling people in both Gateway and in the West End is that you cannot just walk away. It's not one and done, because they continually do travel management plans, resource management plans. They change. New people move in. They want different uses. So it's a document that can be changed, but you have to be ever vigilant. It's not like one and done. And so again, I'm going to implore you to let's just level set and have a conversation before we send a letter of opposition for the NCA.
So thank you for everybody who spoke here today. I want to give you a little bit of history of, Commissioner Hanson is correct. So when this first happened and Commissioner Hanson and I met, I didn't know anything about this. I've been kind of thrust into it, and we were talking about national conservation areas and the BOCC walking away from that. Well, things changed over the last 12 months, and I've now met, sat down, visited with most of the public land advocacy groups from around the country, and the overwhelming sentiment that I get is to not give them an inch, to defend your ground, because if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. So it's not that I based my decisions basically upon what I thought. I went out to the people that have done this, these America's Church of Liberty, the Blue Ribbon Coalition, Our American Lands, the people that have done this for years. I went and talked with Lynn Jackson and Phil Lyman in Utah. They were in the early days of the Bears Ears National Monument, which started as a national conservation area. Dependent upon the administration in the White House and the NGOs and the special interests have a ton of money, that's how it influences our public lands. And so to give you an idea, our response to Commissioner Hanson's, it should be all of Montrose County. I have spent the last 12 months right here talking to residents of Montrose County, not in this capacity, simply as someone that ruined my life by doing it, to be honest with you. But I booked Friendship Hall. I've traveled with Congresswoman Lauren Boebert. I've spoke with Jeff Hurd at Mesa University. I've heard from the residents of Montrose County and Mesa County. I was in attendance at the working group in Nucla, Colorado in the West End, where the working group and maybe 4 people in the audience were the only ones that even wanted to talk about it. Everybody else opposed it. I live streamed the working group in Gateway last night, where a resident with, I don't even know if there was 80, 100 people there, I don't know, I couldn't tell from the Zoom, but somebody got up and asked for a show of hands from anybody in the audience that was in favor of a national conservation area, and not one hand was raised. So I based my decision on this. I'm going to say the largest part of the reason that I'm sitting at this table today is to represent these people that have blown me up for the last 12 months. So I don't take this lightly. To me, this is if I did not support this resolution and try to make a loud stance for Montrose County, for the residents of Montrose County and the West End, I would not feel like I was doing my job.
So, Commissioner Pond, given the testimony that we've had and hearing from Commissioner Hanson, are you flexible at all as far as amending or delaying your resolution, or is your wish to bring this to a vote?
After hearing from Marty about the ability to amend this in the future, I would like to move that we adopt the resolution 14-2025.
Okay, I'll second that. A little bit of quick question for our county attorney. Can we change this resolution on the fly? In other words, change the title of it so it will be more consistent with from National Monument, National Conservation Area to something that would be more appropriate with the last sentence of it? Can we change it on the fly, or do we need to?
You can amend the resolution before adopting it by providing specific a motion to amend with specific language.
Okay. Before we vote on this, does anybody have anything to say?
David White, 1823 Otter Pond Circle, Montrose. Commissioner Henderson and I were at the table with these folks.
it's very difficult what their positions seem to be as far as giving an inch or not. My concern is that compromising may not at the end of the day get us anywhere. One of the things that we had to consider, if you're looking at an NCA, you're looking at a national monument, then comes a national park. I mean, where does it stop? We had the Sierra Club, we had the Energy and Mineral Law Center down in Durango coming after us. We faced many hearings on a special use permit for a uranium mill, processing mill, out in the Paradox Valley. It was unrelenting. I mean, we had Hollywood movie stars showing up at public hearings. The restrictions that any designation could put in place, and I understand a working group and working through a compromise or whatever, that you can exclude certain aspects of a designation if a designation was to happen. But all of these just continue to drag it out and out and out. And if they know where you're coming from to begin with, you don't have to necessarily pull away from the table. And they will wear you out. You'll get the phone calls. You'll get lots of money thrown at you. Public opinion will be shifted. As Mr. Files said, we had the Public Lands Partnership, the Western Colorado Congress, now the Western Colorado Alliance got involved in land use questions. There are so many groups out there that they will literally beat you to death. Talking through it, I mean, it's your decision. I'm just telling you what our experience has been, and I think Mr. Henderson will echo those comments. It's nonstop.
So how come you didn't, you might,
Go
Mr.
ahead,
Chair?
yes, of course.
How come you didn't just do an opposition when you were working through these, I mean, the
We didn't know what
NCA,
we were getting into to begin with.
Yeah.
And you've gone a lot further than we did, all of you. Well, primarily you, Sue, and Sean, on kind of opposite ends of the equation. But it's getting to a compromise that makes everybody happy, I think, is only a temporary solution. I mean, and we've seen it happen. NCAs become national monuments. Look at Dominguez Staircase, or excuse me, Escalante Staircase National Monument in Utah. They locked up 300 years worth of coal. That was under Clinton. I mean, the examples are out there. And I think as time has gone on, a smile on the face, and yes, we agree. I don't care if it's logging, if it's mining, if it's tourism, if it's water recreation. Where does it stop? You can go to the state of Colorado. Water is an issue, every year. And I get the emails, we're going to designate in-stream flows. Well, the Dolores River, there are in-stream flows. I mean, where's it going to go? You have the Salinity project out in the Paradox Valley that came to a stop. I mean, those guys were creating earthquakes out there with the amount of river water being pumped in. I mean, there's so many facets to this thing that somebody could put a roadblock up. I don't know. It's your decision, obviously. I'm just telling you from an experiential standpoint that look how many years this stuff goes, and it just divides everybody needlessly. And everybody has their point. The recreationists, the mining folks, I mean, the potential for economic development. I mean, they fought us and fought us and fought us over the uranium mill with Energy Fuels. People have forgotten about that, and of course, it never happened. But the resources that we have there are potentially in jeopardy. I mean, strategic minerals for this country are a real thing. I mean, we've been buying all this stuff from China. We got to stop. We got to take care of ourselves, and that's another part of all of this. And anyway, enough said. You get my point.
Did you want to respond?
I don't, well, I think, you know, I mean, it's more complicated than we can really all go into here. There's a lot of facets to, the working group acknowledges the energy resources in that, and it was a significant conversation throughout all of our discussions. How do we preserve that for exploration? That's an important piece, and so that would have been part of the exclusion from an NCA if we went that way. So again, it doesn't matter now. You have a motion and a second, right?
Yeah, there's a motion on the floor. I will say that from my standpoint, passing this resolution does not pose any additional risk to Montrose County. It does not remove us from conversation or take us away from the table. It basically says a statement, this is where we're negotiating from. So with that, all in favor of this resolution 14-25 and statement of intent, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I oppose.
Motion passes, resolution passes. Okay, with that, we'll move into our executive session where the board will meet pursuant to CRS 24-6-402, 4B, and F.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
You cannot move into executive session until there's been a motion to do so.
Okay.
It would be my recommendation.
Okay, well, thank you for that.
That
it's my first day.
enter into an executive session for legal advice pertaining to, as provided in the agenda, for legal advice pertaining to a special use permit coming before the board. That portion of the executive session is anticipated to consist.
Quiet, please.
That portion of the executive
Could you please take
session
your conversations
is
outside?
anticipated to be attorney-client privileged communications for which no recording would be required. However, the second part of the executive session may or may not include legal advice that is subject to attorney-client privilege. If it is not, then that portion of the executive session would need to be recorded and retained for 90 days as required by statute.
Okay, so we need a motion.
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you for coming, everybody. Are we going to do this in the...
Yes, we'll go in the little room. Based off the.
Just say we're moving back into general session and then ask the court to report on the executive session.
And ask you to report on the executive session? Let me know when you're ready.
It's so fast, just.
Thanks, Mel.
Okay, we're going to move back into our...
No, thanks.
Sorry, it's so fast. I hit it as soon as we got here. Coming online. We're on.
Good. Okay, we're going to move back into regular session, and I will ask County Attorney to give us a report on our executive session.
Mr. Chairman, in the executive session on the special use permit, present were the three commissioners, the county manager, the deputy county manager, county attorney, and director of planning and development. The director of planning and development left after that portion of the executive session, and the policy, personnel policy session was recorded, and that recording will be retained for 90 days. No decisions were made during any portion of the executive session. Legal advice was provided, policy was discussed, and there were no decisions made.
Okay, with that, we're looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
You mean? Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.